And good evening. We're doing it live right here in the 5 o'clock hour, Yabba Dabba Do Time in Los Angeles. Mottek On Money 5 nights a week for you on the air here in 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KABC.com and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast at KABC.com, Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms. The stock market's record run-up continues. We're seeing another record high for the Dow Jones Industrial Average today, popping up another 158 points. And setting a record for the second day in a row here at 37,248 after touching a record intraday high of 37,287 during the trading day today. The Dow pumped above 37,000 for the first time just yesterday and expanded its lead today. The S&P 500 moved to 12. The NASDAQ gained 28 points. All three indexes closing higher for a sixth session in a row. All this adding to the powerful rally we saw after the Fed came out with a statement on the economy and held the line on interest rates, and also suggested those rates will have likely peaked in this cycle. And they also signaled a 0.75% point rate cut in the new year. More global central bank decisions arrived earlier today with the Bank of England and the European Central Bank, the ECB, leaving their interest rates unchanged. We did see Disney shares rising today after activist investor Nelson Peltz said he intended to nominate himself and former Disney chief financial officer Jay Rasulo to the company's board. Occidental Petroleum, which used to be based in Westwood, now Houston, moving higher by nearly 3% after Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway increased its stake in Occidental Petroleum. The price of oil, meanwhile, has continued to ease a bit. Right now, oil trading at around $71 a barrel, despite the upheaval in the Middle East. And, of course, we're following developments there very closely. Unemployment lines did get a bit shorter this past week, according to another report we got today. Although on the job front, another report, you might have heard Tom Looney talking about this, GM laying off a total of 1,314 employees at two factories in Michigan in connection to ending production of vehicles. Those cuts are related to the announcement earlier that it was delaying production of two all-electric pickups at the plant a full year, thereby idling the factory at the end of this year and transferring about 1,000 workers to other GM facilities in the state. They're also impacted by the self-driving car division as well. Well, what's up, you ask? Nothing but the rent. Again, the correct answer, along with some other things you're paying for, according to the latest inflation readings. Meanwhile, L.A. County landlords can now apply for financial relief from COVID losses. The L.A. City Council this week also approved some recommendations that will expand their evictions defense program. I'll talk about that and more tonight with Janet Gagnon, Director of Government Relations and External Affairs at the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Locked and loaded, the IRS reportedly now adding 1 million rounds of ammunition to its ammo stockpiles, according to the Professional Tax Journal tax notes. Meanwhile, he testified before Congress about pro-growth tax policies and the pitfalls of ideas like wealth taxes and new consumption-based taxes. I'm talking about Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. He'll be joining us live later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the Fed, the record-shattering performance for the Dow this week. Joining us live now, money manager Gabriel Wisdom, co-founder and managing director of American Money Management, based here in Southern California, also author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Happy holidays, Gabriel Wisdom, and thank you very much for taking the call here tonight.
My pleasure, Frank. We finished up the third quarter earnings season. All 500 S&P companies have reported, and it confirms one thing. We're in the roaring 2020s. Earnings just keep going up. Now, some of that has to do with inflation and companies raising prices because they can get away with it, but demand is very strong. Expectations have been cut in 4 of the 11 sectors for logical reasons. The drug makers, for example, auto manufacturers, commodity-related industries, and the S&P 500 materials, basic materials sectors have been soft. But the rest of the market's been quite robust, and a lot of this has to do with the Federal Reserve engineering the near-perfect soft landing so far.
All right, and now nervousness about the year ahead and more recession talk, even though we were waiting for a recession all of this year. It didn't come officially, at least. What do you see ahead for the new year?
Well, Frank, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York has a recession probability indicator that has a near perfect record over the past 57 years. It's been only slightly wrong once, and that was in October of 1966. And actually, what this indicator tells you is that when borrowers don't want to pay more for long-term debt because they need to borrow in order to expand, things are a little bit soft. So long-term interest rates, as measured by the 10-year Treasury, long-term interest rates have remained lower than short-term interest rates. That's not how it's supposed to be. So this inverted yield curve has always predicted over the past 57 years, with one exception, some type of a recession. We know we're seeing a recession in autos and housing. There aren't many mortgage brokers that are finding work right now, for example. Auto sales have been soft. I mean, autos and housing account for over 60% of our economy. So I think the Federal Reserve is saying that they'll cut rates possibly 3 times next year. They don't want to wait for a recession. So it'll be a soft one, I think.
All right, on the air live with Gabriel Wisdom, and we were reminded certainly during the pandemic days that the stock market is a forward-looking mechanism. And remember when we had that big rally, as things were still pretty ugly in the dark days of that pandemic. What do you see the market seeing here at the moment? Happy days here again?
Well, I think so, Frank. First of all, we're going into an election year, and we're not the only country. Some 50 major nations are going into 2024 and an election year cycle. So every central bank in the world, certainly the industrialized world, is looking to create a more happy environment because the incumbents want a second term, or the incumbent party wants a second term. That's always how it's been. There's a 4-year presidential election cycle. And, aside from the geopolitical strife in the Middle East and Russia, Ukraine, and so forth, and inflation, which has been easing, the fourth year of a 4-year term, which we're going into over the past 90 years, we've seen the broad market gain nicely. Some numbers, some metrics tell us it's an average of 14%. Others say it's 6% on average during the fourth year of presidential terms, but it's looking pretty good.
And it should be noted, we have seen the market rally. Remember when that New York Times poll came out showing former President Trump would defeat the incumbent Joe Biden if the election were held, about a month or so ago?
Yeah, well, there's the 2024 election jitters, I'd say. As I mentioned, a lot of countries representing over half the world's population are holding these consequential elections. There's the UK, India, Mexico, South Korea, and so on and so forth. And there is the great Trump panic of 2024, concerns that a second Donald Trump presidency could usher in a dictatorship of sorts. Well, those assertions certainly underestimate the resilience of our democratic institutions. So I wouldn't be too worried about what happens in year 4. You may be happy, you may be unhappy, but it's really the major 1,000 companies in the United States that call the tune.
Well, we're going to have a lot to talk about in the year ahead, certainly. And here's something to talk about now. I don't know if you saw this report, but it talks about commercial real estate, which certainly spooked the markets earlier this year and is still a big concern. The U.S. regulators say commercial real estate is the top threat to the financial system in 2024. Interlinkages between commercial real estate debt holders could trigger a crisis, according to the Financial Stability Oversight Council. That was the organization that was created following the 2008 financial crisis to identify potential risks to the financial stability of the United States and to promote market discipline. It includes the heads of the major U.S. financial regulators and is chaired by former Fed chair, now Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Of course, commercial real estate blamed for the failure of 3 banks earlier this year. What about commercial real estate and the financial system as we head into the new year?
Well, one bright spot is that for the first time this year, the banking sector, and especially the regional banks, are back to even on average. I mean, they were down sharply on the failure of First Republic and Silicon Valley Bank and so on. And they're at least at least back to where they were in terms of market capitalization. Now, lower interest rates, oddly, will help the banks because commercial real estate borrowers will have a chance to refinance. They're already making concessions with a number of large commercial operators so that they don't default. And I'm sure that Mr. Powell and the Federal Reserve is looking closely at this. As I mentioned, real estate and autos make up in the aggregate about 60% of our economy.
On the air live with Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management. Back to the big news that the Dow is at a record high for the second day in a row. I don't think too many people expected this, but we have seen an impressive rally. Of course, the Magnificent Seven led that nice rally we saw earlier this year, and the NASDAQ now not yet in record high territory here, but what do you see ahead for the Magnificent Seven here? Are they going to play catch-up now?
Well, I think there will be catch-up, Frank. I think the Mag 7 have had a phenomenal year, and there'll be a breather and probably some sort of a respite because that's just how it goes. Information technology in general is up some 54% this year to date. Communication services, which pretty broad sector, up 47%. Consumer discretionary up almost 37%. And then there's the S&P 500, the 500 major companies, up over 20%. The laggard has been the old generals, let's call them, the big major companies with a few exceptions like Apple and Microsoft. The Dow Jones Industrial Averages, they're now up, that index is up about 12% year to date. So we're seeing a broadening of market interest now. The Dow only a couple of weeks ago was only up 9%, where the S&P was up 19%. The worst sectors, interestingly, are real estate, healthcare, consumer staples, energy down 8.5%, utilities down 10.6% because they are interest rate sensitive. The Federal Reserve, I know, is looking at this with regard to policy for 2024.
All right, and it's hard to ignore the bounce back we've seen in cryptos with Bitcoin right now hovering just below 43,000. Some of the other coins also have a big rally lately. Is this catching your attention?
Well, it has to because it is an asset class. This last, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago, marked the 50th anniversary for Bitcoin since it first started trading some 15 years ago. Bitcoin is up some 3.4 billion %. Now, is that a bubble? It sounds kind of bubble-ish to me. J.P. Morgan today came out with an expectation that crypto competitor Ethereum would outperform Bitcoin next year only because it's lagged, and they're saying Bitcoin will probably see a 20% drop, down to about 35,000 per coin. Still not too bad. Fueling the hype, of course, has been this halving event, which happens every 4 years, as I understand, tends to reduce the supply of Bitcoin in circulation. But that's already, J.P. Morgan says that's already factored into the current price. So there's shift going on. There's a lot of enthusiasm about an exchange-traded fund that would hold Bitcoin and other currencies. I think that's what's behind that.
All right, this time of the year, we hear about silver and gold. Burl Ives always sings about it, right? And gold has been touching a record high lately. What about the good old gold chains? We talked about the blockchains here, but what about gold and silver here?
Well, money is it's like a theater ticket.
We're all juggling life, a career, and trying to build a little bit of wealth. The Brown Ambition podcast with host Mandy and Tiffany the Budgetnista can help.
Ultimately, I'm not expecting that you know how to do everything, but I am expecting that you are willing to learn.
You can't be in the passenger seat when it comes to your career.
No.
You can't expect your manager to teach you every single thing. If you're falling behind in a skill, like finding a way to get caught up without just telling your boss, like, I don't get it.
Brown Ambition.
Wherever you listen.
You need it in order to get in the store, to get into whatever it is that you want to do. You need some means of exchange. Gold and silver, that's awkward because you don't want to go into the auto dealership with a bag of of gold. They're going to have to bring in an essayist unless these are coins of some sort. And even then, they're not going to be too thrilled. They want good old-fashioned U.S. dollars. So if the dollar weakens, which I suspect it will in a lower interest rate environment for 2024, that'd be very positive for gold because we'll see more manufacturing of jewelry. And silver, certainly as an industrial metal, is very, very popular, big demand, and there's only so much of both gold and silver.
At this point, Gabriel Wisdom, any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
We know, Frank, Rick Newman, our friend there at Yahoo Finance, had an interesting article today about what happened at that carbon summit at Dubai. And nuclear power enjoyed a moment in the sun there at Dubai. The United States and 21 other nations made a pledge to triple nuclear power production by 2050. Now, we always hear about these accidents, and there's a lot of fear and aversion to nuclear. But compared to carbon-related deaths, I mean, it's really quite safe. The big one, the Fukushima disaster in Japan in 2011, killed one worker. Chernobyl in 1979, as he points out, I think it was 79. It was 86.
86, yeah.
That killed 30 people. I mean, sickened some other people. That's terrible. But compared to carbon-related deaths, it's just that nuclear's been quite safe. So I'm looking at the Global Ex-Uranium Exchange Traded Fund, the symbol URA. Don't own it yet because it's up some 43% year to date. But I think we're going to see more nuclear being built. In fact, the U.S. has made a pledge to build out nuclear along with these 21 other countries.
All right, here we are, December 14th. What about Santa's helpers? What about the retailers here as we head into the home stretch?
Well, it's certainly looking a lot like Christmas on Wall Street. We've got a Santa Claus rally. There's no doubt about it. And the retailers today, earnings were surprisingly strong. The consensus was we'd see a weakening, due to recession concerns. But retailers did very, very well. Consumers are spending. I like the S&P Retail Exchange Traded Fund. You get them all. You get Gap, Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie Fitch, Macy's, which has some real estate value, clearly. Really had a great week. Dick's Sporting Goods, American Eagle Outfitters, and so forth. The symbol XRT. I do like the retailers for 2024. They've been big laggards.
Gabriel Wisdom, co-founder and managing director at American Money Management, based here in Southern California, author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel, we wish you and everyone there all the best this holiday season and hope to talk to you again very soon. Thanks again very much for taking the call here tonight.
Thank you, Frank.
Folks, people like you and me have our ear to the ground in all things business. We like to be informed and well prepared. And as important as finance is, I want you to have a plan in case you're hit by someone not paying attention to the road. Thinking ahead serves us well. And even still, we can get caught off guard as people are so focused on their destination that they might not have a plan if they're in an accident that's not their fault. That's why I encourage you to put my friend Attorney Clark Fielding's number in your phone. That number is 833-88-SHARK. So if you're in an accident, you'll be ready with your strategy to make Clark Fielding your very first call. Fielding Law aims for the highest possible settlement, considering you might need long-term care, rehab, compensation for lost wages, and any ongoing physical or emotional pain. So if you're hurt in any kind of accident, call for a free consultation with Fielding Law. You can trust them. They're honest, respected, and your strategy in case you get into that unexpected accident. Motorcycle, truck, pedestrian, scooter, hit and run, boating, or bike accidents, you name it. The number to call, 833-88-SHARK. That's 833-88-SHARK. Or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. There it is, a hey-ya kind of day on Wall Street. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Another record-shattering day for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, hitting a record high for the second day in a row. The Dow up another 158 points, settling at 37,248. Yep, you heard me. The Dow's above 37,000. Hit that mark for the first time yesterday and extended gains today. Got as high as 37,287 during the trading session. The S&P 500 moved up 12, settling at 4,719, and the NASDAQ gained 28 points at 14,761. All the major averages up for the sixth session in a row. The rally continues following that big Fed meeting yesterday. The Fed Chairman Jerome Powell signaled interest rate cut projections that will be in the new year by maybe 0.75 of a percentage point rate cut seen for the new year. And we had that powerful rally after the Fed suggested rates will have likely peaked in the cycle, and we can expect some rate cuts in the new year. Taking a look at the yield in the 10-year note here right now, which impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, we're at 3.96%. Mortgage rates have come down again over the past week, according to the latest survey from mortgage giant Freddie Mac. In fact, mortgage rates this week fell below 7% for the first time since mid-August. Big news in real estate. The average 30-year fix now 6.95%, according to mortgage giant Freddie Mac. Taking a look at where the price of gold stands right now, up about $2.50 at $2,047.40. Oil right now at $71.77 a barrel. Taking a look at the cryptos here, which have had a big run-up recently. Bitcoin now up about $80 at $43,028. Ethereum up $6 at $23.04. And Doge at 10 cents. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC, watching how your money's being spent in Washington. Congress departing Washington tonight without a deal to pass wartime support for Ukraine, but Senate negotiators and the president still racing to wrap up a border security compromise to unlock the stalemate before the end of the year. Meanwhile, locked and loaded, the IRS reportedly adding 1 million rounds of ammunition to its ammo stockpiles, that according to the professional tax journal Tax Notes. Keeping track of all this, joining me live now is Grover Norquist, America's leading taxpayer advocate, president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, thanks very much for taking the call here. Take it from the top and give us an update on what's happening there in Washington.
Well, if you were worried that the IRS didn't have enough rounds of ammunition for their 87,000 new employees they're hoping to bring in, the good news is that they finally admitted, after being asked for years, to admit how many bullets they have in storage, packed up. It's 6 million. 6 million. Somewhat fewer than 5,000 IRS agents are viewed as qualified to carry a gun, but there's 6 million rounds of ammunition. It really does. It was 5 million last time they deigned to tell us. The Republicans asked for years, how many bullets do you have? How many bullets do you have? And the the Democrat, who is the head of the IRS, refused to tell elected officials how many bullets they had. He did tell the press when somebody in the press asked in Tax Notes. So we have the IRS bureaucracy once again acting above the law, outside the law, not telling the American people and Congress for years how many bullets they were buying. Now, why do you need 1 million more bullets? They had 5 million. And when a number of years ago, the Inspector General went through and looked and said, how many people have the right to carry a gun? How many people have been trained? What's going on? Fewer than 5,000 people have the ability or the right to carry a gun in the IRS. And in one 3-year period that they looked at, more people discharged, more IRS agents fired off their guns by mistake than on purpose. Okay, this is Don Knotts territory. Okay, how in the world? Why in the world do they have people who aren't trained shooting themselves in the foot, firing off in any direction, and they need more bullets?
Are they shooting at people who've...
Former Navy SEAL Mike Ritland keeps it real on the Mike Drop podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Rudy Reyes.
The ethics of martial arts is why I joined the Marine Corps. I never thought I was going to join the military because I'd been around so much gun violence, and I wanted to be the antithesis of that. I loved fighting hand-to-hand. It's fair. You don't have to kill your opponent. You can beat them with ability and skill.
Mike Drop, raw, unfiltered, intellectually sound, wherever you listen.
And taking the wrong deductions?
You know, they didn't get an answer to that. There's a lot of redacted stuff. What they were willing to admit to is these were the guns going off when they weren't supposed to, right? You pick up the gun because you're an idiot and you put your finger on the trigger when you pick up the gun. That will do it. This is the kind of thing they teach teenagers not to do when they teach you how to use a gun. And evidently the IRS doesn't get that. They are supposed to have a certain amount of training. What the Inspector General found is they weren't doing that. Obviously, it showed up in that. And yet, 6 million rounds of ammunition, the price of ammunition has been high recently. Why would you buy more? Maybe one of the reasons it's high is that not just the IRS, but other government agencies with no need for a gun are deciding to arm themselves. I'm sorry, but it smells. Why would the IRS need a gun? If you think you're going to go in and talk to somebody, call the local policeman. Get the FBI. Get a professional, not some pencil-necked guy with a gun that goes off.
Unbelievable. Thanks for keeping track of that for us here. And I know you laid it on thick when you testified before Congress recently, right, about pro-growth tax policies and the pitfalls of ideas like wealth taxes and new consumption-based taxes, which you've also been talking about. Tell us about your recent appearance there and what you emphasized in front of the members of Congress.
Yeah, it was the Ways and Means Committee, the tax people, and it was a discussion of consumption taxes. Now, I'm all in favor of getting to a consumption tax where you tax consumed income one time at one rate. But you don't need a new tax for that. You just take the present income tax and you say instead of having several rates, you have one. Russia has one rate, 13. We have several rates. We got down to two rates under Reagan, and then Bush and Clinton and so on decided to have more rates and so on. But a single rate tax, which 19 states have a single rate tax, so people are familiar with it in the United States. Other states, another 10 states, are moving to a single rate tax. So there's a lot of support for doing that. Then the other one is you just, instead of having an IRA where you can put some money away for retirement, you have a universal savings account. So you say, here's what I earned. I earned $100,000. I'm going to spend $80,000. I'm going to put $20,000 into the universal savings account, and I'm going to save that for health care, for education, for whatever I want, for buying something 20 years from now, okay? And you don't tax that until it's consumed. So with a few tweaks to the income tax, you can turn it into something that taxes consumed income one time at one rate. What we have now is many rates, and you tax income when you earn it, when you save it, when you invest it, when you get a dividend, when you get a capital gain, and if you're stupid enough to die, they still have. So they keep coming back and going, look, take it once and go away. So that's a good idea. The bad ideas are, in addition to the income tax, why don't you swallow a second tapeworm to see if that will discipline the first tapeworm? Answer, no. Tapeworms grow at their own rate, so do taxes. One of those is a value-added tax. Talk to Europe. Every country that's imposed a value-added tax was defeated in the next election. They are not popular. They are extremely expensive. And the difference between the size of government in the United States and any European country is the VAT. Okay? How do you get, they can't get more money out of the American people with the income tax.
VAT is the value-added tax, right? VAT is the value-added tax.
I'm sorry, yes, value-added tax. I'm sorry. No American should have to know that already. It's
anyone who's traveled.
Thing.
Right.
Yes, sadly. So we don't want a VAT. That's a disaster. That's what the left wants. The left's goal is to give us a VAT and have higher taxes on high-income people so that middle Americans won't notice that they're paying extremely more through a VAT. That's very regressive rather than progressive. The other one is a carbon tax or a border-adjusted tax. Those are all things that are basically value-added taxes on training wheels. A carbon tax will turn into a VAT. That's the purpose of the carbon tax. They sell it to you on the environment, and they turn it into a VAT. Or the retail sales tax, or the so-called fair tax, which has all the right reasons people talk about it. You have to go to a consumption tax, like a big sales tax. That's a good idea. But you can get to a sales tax by turning the individual income tax into a tax on consumed income. We don't need a second tax. The challenge is that will be not instead of, but in addition to the present income tax. That's the way it's worked in Europe.
All right. Well, Grover, thank you very much for that comprehensive update. We do appreciate you keeping track of all of this on behalf of taxpayers. And that's really something about the ammunition there. Thank goodness you're a straight shooter, Grover, and we appreciate you telling it like it is and informing us and keeping us well up to date on what's happening and how our money is being spent there in Washington. We wish you a great holiday season. Maybe get a chance to speak with you again. I see the Senate plan to come back next week in hopes of passing a $110 billion package of aid for Ukraine, Israel, and other national security issues. So hopefully we'll get a chance to speak with you again. Thank you very much for taking the call here tonight. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good evening and happy holidays. What's up, you ask? Well, nothing but the rent. Again, usually the correct answer here, along with some other things you're paying for, according to the latest inflation numbers. Meanwhile, L.A. County landlords applying for financial relief from COVID losses. That's now a possibility. The L.A. City Council this week approving some recommendations that will expand their evictions defense program for renters. Let's bring in the expert on all this now, Janet Gagnon, Director of Government Relations and External Affairs for the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Janet, thank you very much for taking the call and joining us live here tonight.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Janet, tell us about, first of all, how are rents looking these days? Are they going up or are they coming down to any significant amount here in the Los Angeles area?
Well, they're actually slowing down as the months progress and we get away from COVID-19. The overall increases are slowing down quite a bit, and that's good news for everyone in rental housing. I've even seen some statistics recently around the newer buildings giving discounts and 1 month free to entice renters to take those newer units. Of course, a lot of our renters are the ones from mom and pops, and those are in the older buildings.
Right, and they were hit hard during the pandemic because people were not paying the rent right, and a lot of those people, as we've heard from your associate there, that some of them had to throw in the towel and have difficulty. So now L.A. County landlords, we hear, can apply for financial relief from those COVID losses. Tell us about what those folks need to know at this point.
Yes, there are two different relief programs. The one for LA City has already closed, but the one for LA County is open. It applies to renters throughout LA County, excluding the city of LA only, because they had their own program. But that's going to go to cover 88 incorporated cities and 140 unincorporated areas. So that is a small amount. It's $68 million from LA County to cover such a large territory and so many renters in need. So we know that that money is going to go quickly. The closing date for applications is January 12th. It is open to renters in all sizes of buildings, unlike LA City, that was limited to renters in buildings with 12 or fewer units. So we're expecting that to get blown off the hinges soon with applications. With LA City, they're already coming back with numbers. They had contributed $30 million or allocated $30 million, and they have already received applications in their 2-week period that it was open for $381 million. So you can see there's a huge need. These rental assistance programs we do appreciate for the individuals that are able to take advantage, but these funds will go very, very quickly and definitely do not meet the need.
All right. On the flip side, looks like the City Council approving some recommendations that will expand their evictions defense program. What's your reaction to that news this week?
Yes, very bad idea. As we just discussed, people are still in arrears for what they owed during COVID-19, and those monies are still outstanding. Going forward, it's likely that certain low-income households, very low and extremely low, are still going to be struggling, and the city's solution, and the county's for that matter, is to pay those monies to attorneys to argue about the rent rather than paying the rent. In the Los Angeles Housing Department's own report from October 2023, they have statistics mentioning that one of the reports from 2019 estimates legal cost at $5,000 per household. If you look at LA City Controller's website, where they're tracking all the evictions, the average eviction amount is right around $3,800. So it would actually be cheaper for the city to pay off the rent that is owed rather than paying attorneys to fight about it. But for whatever reason, the city is now thinking funneling money to private attorneys is a much better approach. versus paying for the needed housing and the housing being provided.
Very interesting. Well, thanks for highlighting that. And how are we seeing a wave of evictions out there?
We are not seeing a wave. What has happened is there has been a small bump based on the 4 years of no increases and the 3 years of COVID moratoriums against evictions. And so that was a pent-up demand, quote unquote. And so we saw a slight bump with that, but no tsunami that the rental advocates have consistently said is coming. It's coming, and it never materializes. So what you're seeing now is just the standard course. Obviously, there is a big difference between being given a 3-day notice, which is basically a reminder that you need to pay your rent, versus an unlawful detainer action, which is actually an eviction legal proceeding. So you're going to get those notices as a reminder, if you will, a gentle tap on your shoulder of, don't forget, you still owe rent. And so you're seeing some of those numbers being conflated between the 3-day notice and the actual evictions.
Well, thanks for that comprehensive update tonight on this very, very important subject, rents in Los Angeles. And Janet Gagnon, Director of Government Relations and External Affairs at the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. We wish you and everyone there a wonderful holiday season, Janet, and look forward to your updates. Thank you very much for taking the call here tonight.
Thank you, and happy holidays to you as well.
Likewise, Janet. Thank you very, very much. And coming up next is the 790 KBC News Blitz with our Legal Eagle Royal Oaks. I'll be back again tomorrow evening in the 5 o'clock hour right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. In case you missed any of the show tonight or any of the shows this week or recently, you can bring up the Mottek On Money podcast on demand at kbc.com. We'll be back again tomorrow evening in the 5 o'clock hour right here, live on the air on 790 KBC.
You loved Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now get to know her on Give Them Lala.
I don't know that I would call it respect that I have for Sandoval, but the world hated him. He still went out, performed shows with his head held high. He showed up to the reunion when we all were going after him. Like, he didn't skip a beat. The way he's handling it, if I were in his position, and I said it straight up to the entire audience, thousands of people, I would tell you all to and the room was dead.
Watch what Lala is talking about on YouTube or search for Give Them Lala wherever you listen.